I remember the exact moment I found out I was going to be a father. We were sitting on the worn-out gray couch in our small living room, the one we bought just after our wedding because it was all we could afford. Emily's hands trembled as she held the test in front of me, her eyes wide and brimming with tears, though I couldn't yet tell if they were from joy or something else. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. Something inside me exploded, joy, disbelief, a wild kind of hope I hadn't felt in years. My throat tightened, and I pulled her into my arms before I could even speak. We sat there, tangled together, while my mind raced ahead to nursery colors, names, the way the baby might look. I saw our future unfold like a story I had always wanted to read. We'd been trying for over a year. Countless doctor visits, endless charts, calendars marked with circles and question marks. And now, here it was, a miracle I had nearly stopped believing would come. I thought we were finally getting our happy ending. That night, I lay awake next to her, my hand resting on her stomach, already protective, already connected. I whispered to the life growing inside her. I told our baby how much I loved them. I meant every word. If someone had told me then that this moment, this perfect, glowing moment, was the beginning of the end, I would have laughed in their face. 2 months later, everything changed. It started small. Emily was distant. She'd flinch when I touched her, and the warmth in her eyes had faded into something unreadable. I thought it was hormones, or nerves, or even fear. I tried to be patient, to give her space. But a voice inside me started whispering doubts. One night, I came home early from work. I'd picked up her favorite Thai food, extra spring rolls, the way she liked. The apartment was dark except for the light spilling from under the bedroom door. I heard her on the phone. "No, he doesn't know." Her voice was low, tight with panic. I froze. "I can't, not now. What if he finds out?" Something cold spread through my chest. I backed away, silent, and waited in the hallway until she hung up. When I walked in with the food and my best fake smile, she jumped. "Who were you talking to?" I asked casually, though my pulse thudded in my ears. She hesitated. "My dad." "Just, about the pregnancy." Lie. I could feel it in my bones. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But something had cracked, and I couldn't unhear what I'd heard. Days passed. I didn't confront her. I just watched. I paid attention to things I used to ignore. Her texts. Her sudden disappearances. The way she avoided eye contact when I talked about the baby. I started spiraling. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I began second-guessing every moment of our life together. Then one night, while she was asleep, I opened her phone. I know it was wrong. But I had to know. The first thing I saw was a message from my brother. "We need to talk. This baby, what are we going to do?" I stared at it, frozen. My brother. My own damn brother. Everything inside me went still. Then it erupted. A rage I didn't know I was capable of. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't even wake her. I just walked out of the apartment and drove around until the sun rose. My whole life had been a lie. The woman I loved. The baby I dreamed of. My own flesh and blood betraying me. I wanted answers. But more than that, I wanted to hurt. I wanted someone else to feel what I was feeling. I confronted my brother first. He tried to deny it. Then he begged. Said it was a one-time thing. Said he was drunk. Said he didn't mean for it to happen. I punched him. That part, I'm not proud of. But he didn't fight back. Just let me take my shot. Maybe he thought he deserved it. Maybe he did. Then I went home. Emily was in the kitchen, making tea like nothing had happened. I dropped the phone on the counter. "You want to tell me why my brother is texting you about our baby?" She turned, pale, the mug in her hand shaking. I was going to tell you. I swear. I just didn't know how. I laughed. A bitter, ugly sound. "When were you planning to tell me?" "After I signed the birth certificate. After the first birthday party." "When?" She cried. Apologized. Said it meant nothing. That she regretted it. That she didn't even know if it was his or mine. That was the worst part. I didn't know either. I slept on the couch for weeks. We barely spoke. I went numb. My heart turned to ash in my chest. Then the paternity test came back. Not mine. I stared at the envelope like it might burst into flames. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty. The baby wasn't mine. And I didn't want it anymore. I told her I was leaving. That I couldn't do this. That I wouldn't raise someone else's child, especially not his. She begged. Sobbed. Said we could go to therapy, that she'd cut all contact with him. That the baby deserved a father. I couldn't look at her. I packed a bag and walked out the door. But the story didn't end there. A week later, her father showed up at my door. He looked older than I remembered. More tired. He held a photo of the sonogram in his hand. I know what she did was unforgivable, he said quietly. But that baby is innocent. I didn't respond. You loved her once, he said. You loved what you thought was your child. That feeling doesn't just vanish. I turned away, jaw clenched. Please, he said. Don't let one mistake destroy all of you. Adopt the baby. Give it a chance. Give yourself a chance. He left the photo on my table and walked away. I stared at it for hours. Then I picked it up. And I cried, for the first time since this whole thing began. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, staring at the sonogram her father had left behind, the edges curling slightly from where I kept rubbing it between my fingers. It was a strange thing, how a blurry black and white image could rip your soul in half and stitch it back together in the same breath. I kept asking myself, what kind of man walks away from a child who never asked to be born into this mess? But every time I started to feel that pull, that whisper of hope, that fragile thing still clinging to my heart, my brother's face flashed in my mind. And hers. And the lies. The betrayal. The weeks I spent talking to her belly, dreaming of the life we'd build. It wasn't mine. None of it was. I didn't answer her calls. Didn't reply to her texts. I avoided family gatherings, ignored my mother's confused messages, and completely cut off my brother. I was trying to disappear, trying to find peace. But peace doesn't come easy when you feel like a ghost in your own life. Then, one afternoon, 3 weeks after I'd left, I saw her. I was walking to my car outside the grocery store. I heard someone call my name. I turned, and there she was, Emily. Pregnant belly now obvious under her coat, eyes red-rimmed, hair pulled back like she hadn't had the energy to care. We just stood there, frozen. People moved around us, oblivious to the gravity of what was hanging in the air. I didn't know you'd be here, she said, her voice small. I live 10 minutes away, I said, a little too sharply. It's not like I vanished off the map. I needed to see you, she said, then looked down. I don't even know what to say anymore. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I miss you. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my mouth not to say something cruel. She stepped closer. I know the baby isn't yours. But that doesn't mean you weren't supposed to be their father. I scoffed. That's not how biology works, Emily. No, she said quickly. But maybe that's how love works. I nearly laughed. Love? She wanted to talk about love. You broke us, I said. You and my brother. There's no us anymore. I don't even know who you are. Tears welled in her eyes, and she nodded like she'd expected that. I made a mistake. The worst one of my life. I hate myself for it every single day. But that baby didn't ask for any of this. And you were going to be a great dad. You still can be. You want me to raise your child with him? I said, voice rising. You want me to wake up every day and look into the eyes of the men who betrayed me? No, she said softly. I want you to wake up every day and look into the eyes of someone who might remind you of the men you could be. That hit harder than I expected. I turned and walked away. I couldn't handle the weight of her words, the broken hope in her voice. But that night, her father came by again. He sat across from me, same tired look in his eyes, same slow, careful speech. "You know," he said, "when Emily was 5, she got lost in the park. I turned away for 1 minute and she vanished. I thought I'd die from the panic. I ran like a madman. And when I found her, just sitting on a swing like nothing had happened, I didn't yell. I just dropped to my knees and held her. I stayed silent, unsure where he was going. She didn't mean to get lost," he said. "She was just a kid. But even grown-ups get lost sometimes. Especially when they're scared." I stared at him. "She didn't get lost. She made a choice. A cruel, selfish one." He nodded slowly. "Yes. She did. But I've learned that sometimes the people we love most are capable of hurting us the worst. And sometimes, they're the ones who need us most after the damage is done." I looked down. I hated that he made sense. I hated that his calmness forced me to feel everything I'd been trying to bury. "She said something today," I finally said. "That maybe love doesn't need biology. That maybe this baby still needs me." "And you?" he asked gently. "Do you still need that baby?" I didn't answer. He stood up, walked to the door, then turned back. "You're a good man. Don't let pain make you forget that." That night, I took the sonogram photo again. I laid it on the table next to a picture of my own dad, gone now almost 10 years. He'd always said that being a father wasn't about blood, but about presence. "Be the kind of man who stays," he used to say. I fell asleep thinking about that. The next morning, I showed up at Emily's doctor's appointment. She looked shocked when she saw me in the waiting room, clutching her purse like it was her anchor. "I'm not here for you," I said quickly. "I'm here for the baby." She nodded slowly, lips trembling. "Okay." I sat with her through the ultrasound. Heard the heartbeat again. It sounded like a drum, steady and alive. I felt something crack inside me, but this time, it wasn't pain. It was something softer. "I don't know what this means," I told her as we walked to the parking lot afterward. "But I'm willing to come to the next appointment. That's it for now. Don't expect more." "I won't," she said, wiping her eyes. "Thank you." I didn't respond. I just got in my car and drove away. But something had shifted. I went home and stared at the baby books we'd bought months ago. I flipped through them, stopping on a page about middle names. That night, I dreamed of a little boy with my eyes and her smile. I woke up crying again. Maybe it was grief. Or maybe it was something else entirely, some broken piece of hope clawing its way back to the surface. I didn't know what was ahead. I didn't know if I could ever love her again. But that baby hadn't betrayed me. That baby still had a chance. And maybe, just maybe, so did I. I didn't expect to come back again. But I did. The second doctor's appointment came and went. Then a third. By the fourth, I was already calling the clinic myself to check the schedule. I told myself I was just making sure the baby was healthy, that I was being a decent human being, not anything more. I wasn't there for Emily. I wasn't there to heal anything. I just didn't want a child to grow up without someone steady to rely on. But the truth? I was already starting to care again. Not about her, but about that tiny heartbeat. That future. The first time I felt the baby kick, it was late spring. The cherry blossoms were blooming across town, and the world looked softer somehow, like a fresh start. Emily had invited me to a birthing class. I said no. Twice. Then I found myself sitting in the back row, arms crossed, pretending not to listen. She looked over once or twice but didn't smile. She was learning not to push me, and that made things easier. The instructor talked about breathing techniques, swaddling, and infant CPR. I focused on the mannequin in front of me, trying not to think about how real everything was becoming. Then she asked us to pair up. Emily hesitated. I stood still. A nurse stepped in and offered to assist her instead. That was the moment I saw something shift in Emily, something quiet and defeated. She didn't cry or complain, but I saw it in her shoulders, in the way she nodded and said, "That's okay." Afterward, she thanked me for coming. I gave a tight nod and walked her to the car in silence. As she climbed in, she hesitated. "You know," she said, "every time I feel the baby move, I wonder if they know you're nearby. It's like they calm down when you're around." I didn't answer. I didn't want to open that door. Not yet. Weeks passed. I went with her to pick out a crib. Helped paint the nursery a pale yellow that caught the sunlight just right. I stayed silent when she talked about baby names, only raising an eyebrow when she suggested one that reminded me of someone we both disliked. "I'm just trying them out," she said, forcing a little laugh. I didn't tell her, but I already had a name in mind. One I whispered at night when no one could hear me. One I wasn't ready to share yet. She asked me one afternoon, when we were building the crib, if I would be in the delivery room. I paused, screwdriver in hand. "If you want me there for the baby," I said slowly, "I'll come. But don't ask me for anything more than that." She nodded. Her face fell a little, but she didn't protest. Maybe she was starting to understand that rebuilding a bridge doesn't happen just because you show up with planks and nails. It takes time. And trust. And I was still missing half the pieces. As the due date grew closer, something strange started to happen. I started feeling present again. Not whole. Not healed. But more like myself. I went back to work part-time. I reconnected with a few friends. I visited my parents more. My mother was cautiously hopeful, asking gentle questions about Emily, about the baby. She was careful not to push too hard, but I knew what she was thinking. "She made a terrible mistake," she told me one afternoon. "But sometimes, the people we love them in spite of what they've done." I didn't reply. I just stared out the window and watched the wind move through the trees. What surprised me most was how completely my brother had vanished. No apology. No visit. Not even a text. It was like he'd dropped off the face of the earth. A part of me was relieved. I didn't think I could handle seeing him. But another part, the angry, hollow part, wanted answers. Or at least an explanation. But maybe silence was its own kind of answer. One night, about 2 weeks before her due date, Emily called me. "It's happening," she said, breathless. I froze. "What?" "My water broke. I'm heading to the hospital." I grabbed my coat, heart racing. By the time I got there, she was already in the room, clutching the side rails, sweat on her forehead, pain written across her face. "You came," she whispered, voice tight with exhaustion. "Of course I came," I said, moving to her side. And in that moment, everything else faded. The pain, the betrayal, the past, it all slipped away as the hours ticked on. I held her hand. I talked her through the contractions. I wiped her forehead when she trembled. It wasn't about us anymore. It was about this tiny soul trying to make their way into the world. And when the baby finally arrived, crying, red, alive, I felt my knees buckle. "It's a boy," the nurse said. I didn't know what to say. I just stared. At him. At her. At the miracle between us. They handed him to Emily first. She cradled him gently, her tears falling silently. Then she looked at me. "Do you want to hold him?" she asked. I hesitated. Then reached out. And as I held him, so small, so warm, I felt something shift permanently inside me. This was my son. Not by blood. But by heart. He looked up at me with wide, sleepy eyes, and I whispered the name I'd been holding onto for weeks. "Lucas," I said. Emily blinked. "That's perfect." I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. The only thing that mattered was the baby in my arms. We didn't talk about what came next. Not right away. I helped her settle in at home. I stayed on the couch for a while, getting up for night feedings, helping with diaper changes. Lucas bonded with me quickly, his eyes searching for me whenever I walked into the room. One morning, as I was feeding him, Emily came into the kitchen. She watched us in silence for a while. "He loves you," she said. "I know. You're good at this." I gave a soft shrug. "I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm trying." "You're doing more than trying. You're being his father." I looked down at Lucas. I guess I am. She moved closer. Do you think, she started, then stopped. Do you think there's a future for us? I didn't answer right away. I thought about all the nights I'd cried alone, all the trust she'd shattered. But I also thought about Lucas. About what kind of man I wanted to be. About the kind of life I wanted to build. I think, I said slowly, that healing takes time. And right now, I'm focused on him. She nodded, swallowing hard. I understand. I'm not saying never, I added. But I need more than apologies. I need to see who you become after all this. She stepped back, blinking away tears. Okay, she said. I'll show you. And for the first time in a long while, I believed her. Not because of her words, but because of the quiet strength in them. That night, I rocked Lucas to sleep, his tiny fingers curled around mine. I whispered a promise into the silence. I may not be your blood. But I will never leave you. And I meant it. Because love isn't always neat. It's not always fair. But sometimes, it's enough to show up. Even when it hurts. Even when you're still healing. Because some things, some people, are worth the fight. Part 4. I never thought I'd be the guy pacing the aisles of Target at 2 a.m. with a fussy baby in a carrier strapped to my chest, half asleep and looking for gripe water. Yet here I was, reading labels, muttering to myself, and rocking Lucas gently as he hiccuped through his cries. It was strange, how natural it had started to feel. Not easy. But real. I'd built routines. I knew how to warm bottles with one hand, how to soothe him with a hum that wasn't quite a song but always worked. I kept a spare pacifier in my coat pocket and learned to interpret his cries like some kind of secret language. Emily and I still lived apart. That was intentional. After the birth, she moved back into the apartment we used to share, and I got a small place 2 blocks over. Close enough to help, distant enough to keep my boundaries intact. I saw Lucas every day. Sometimes I stayed the night on the couch if he had a bad evening. But I never crossed the hallway to the bedroom. Never lingered too long. We were navigating something fragile, like walking on cracked ice. Emily had changed, I could see it. She was softer, quieter, more patient. But I wasn't ready to hand her back the version of me she broke. That version was gone. What remained was someone rebuilt, slower to trust, more aware of how fast things can collapse. Still, there were moments. Moments like the time she caught me napping with Lucas on my chest and didn't say a word, just stood there with a tired smile. Or when she brought me coffee one morning before I took Lucas to the doctor, and left a sticky note on the lid that said, "You're doing a great job." I mean that. It was nothing. It was everything. The first real test came on a Saturday afternoon in late June. Lucas was down for a nap, Emily was folding laundry, and I was organizing a new set of bottles when the doorbell rang. She froze. I looked at her. "You expecting someone?" She shook her head. "No." I opened the door. And there he was. My brother. Jason. He looked thinner. Paler. Like regret had been gnawing at his bones for months. He was holding something, maybe a peace offering, maybe nothing at all. His eyes met mine, and I saw him flinch slightly at whatever expression was written across my face. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said quietly. Emily appeared behind me. She sucked in a breath and then disappeared down the hallway without a word. "You shouldn't be here," I said, keeping my voice low. "I know." "Then why are you?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Because I needed to see you. To talk. To say something." I didn't move. My hand gripped the doorframe. I wanted to slam it in his face. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "You've got 60 seconds, I said. Go." Jason's eyes glistened with something I didn't want to interpret as guilt. It was easier to believe he felt nothing. That he'd acted out of impulse, selfishness, stupidity. It was easier to hate him that way. "I messed up," he began. "I don't even know how to explain it. I wasn't in love with her. I wasn't trying to hurt you. Congratulations. You did both. He looked down, swallowing hard. I've been living with it every day. I think about that night constantly. I think about how fast everything fell apart. And I think about you, what I did to you. You didn't just hurt me, I said through clenched teeth. You blew up everything. My trust. My relationship. My family. You humiliated me. I know. No, I don't think you do. My voice was rising. You were my brother. You were supposed to have my back. And you chose her. His jaw clenched. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. A beat of silence passed between us. The air between us felt like static, charged, unpredictable. I came here, he said finally, because I wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to hear it. I stared at him. You think sorry fixes this? No. But it's all I have. I looked him up and down. He wasn't the man I remembered. Not anymore. Maybe I wasn't either. I've got a son now, I said. His name is Lucas. He doesn't need chaos in his life. And neither do I. I understand. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked back inside and closed the door. When I turned, Emily was standing at the edge of the hallway. Her face was unreadable. I didn't know he was coming, she said. I believe you. She nodded, then glanced down the hall, where Lucas was beginning to stir. I think he needs you. That was her way of saying thank you. Of giving me space again. And I appreciated it. That night, after Lucas went down again, I sat alone on the couch. The apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that presses into your ears and makes your thoughts louder. I didn't know how to feel. Seeing Jason had scraped open something I thought was healing. But I didn't regret not punching him. I didn't regret hearing him out. Maybe that meant I was changing too. Emily came out of the bedroom holding a mug of tea. She hesitated, then sat in the chair across from me. Do you want to talk about it? No, I said honestly. But I probably will. Eventually. She nodded. A few minutes passed. Then she looked at me again. I meant what I said before. About showing you I've changed. I know. I don't expect you to love me again. Or trust me. I want to earn whatever piece of you is still open to me. Even if that's just as Lucas's mom. That hit harder than I expected. The humility in her voice. The lack of expectation. I took a slow breath. I'm not angry all the time anymore, I said. But I still remember everything. I still wake up some mornings and wonder what would have happened if you just told me how unhappy you were instead of doing what you did. I wonder that too. But I don't hate you. Not anymore. She looked down at her tea, blinking quickly. That's more than I deserve. I didn't argue. I didn't comfort her. I just let it be. Because sometimes the beginning of forgiveness isn't a grand gesture, it's a quiet truth left to sit in the air like steam from a cooling cup. A week later, I moved into the apartment building across the street from Emily. Bigger space. Room for Lucas when he started crawling. I bought furniture with soft corners and cleared out an entire closet for baby supplies. When I walked him over to Emily's each morning, we exchanged brief smiles. Nothing more. But sometimes, as she stood in the doorway holding him, I caught her watching me just a little longer than necessary. And once or twice. I didn't look away. Not yet. But maybe soon. Lucas turned 1 on a Saturday. It was sunny, warm, and the first time in a long time that the air felt light instead of tense. I'd suggested we keep the birthday small, just family and close friends, nothing over the top. Emily agreed without hesitation. We set up a few folding tables in the small park near my apartment. I grilled burgers, Emily made cupcakes, and Lucas smashed his first piece of cake with a kind of gleeful destruction that made everyone laugh. There were balloons, photos, a few gifts. But mostly, there was peace. I didn't expect to feel so content. Watching Emily laugh with our neighbors, or helping Lucas wobble around on his new walker, it did something to me. Softened me in places I thought had hardened for good. There was a moment that stuck with me. I was collecting wrapping paper off the grass when I saw her, across the park, holding Lucas in her arms. The late afternoon sun caught her hair, and she looked familiar. Not in the sense that I knew her, but in the way you remember someone from a dream you used to have every night. That version of Emily, the one before everything fell apart, was flickering back. And I felt something. Something dangerous. Something like hope. That evening, after we put Lucas down for the night, she stayed to help clean up. She was barefoot in my kitchen, washing dishes and humming to herself. I watched from the hallway, unsure if I was admiring or mourning. Maybe both. She caught me looking. "What?" she asked, smiling. "Nothing," I said, clearing my throat. "Just, you look happy." "I am," she said softly. "Today was good." "Yeah. It really was." She dried her hands and leaned against the counter. "I've missed days like this. Where everything feels normal." "It's been a while," I agreed. She hesitated, then looked down. "Do you ever wonder if we could have had this all along, if we just handled things differently?" I exhaled. "Yeah. All the time." She nodded. "I don't want to mess things up again. Not with you. Not with Lucas. I'm not asking for anything, I hope we can keep building something. Even if it's slow." I didn't answer right away. Then I stepped forward and said, "Slow is fine. I'd rather build something steady than rush back into a fire." She smiled, and for the first time, it didn't carry sadness. Just warmth. We stood there for a moment, two people with too much history and just enough courage to hope for a better sequel. The next week was quiet. Good quiet. We took turns with Lucas more fluidly. She came over for dinner twice, I walked him to her place some mornings. We didn't kiss. We didn't flirt. But we didn't pull away from small touches, either. A brush of fingers. A shared laugh. Then, on a Wednesday, everything shifted. I had just picked up Lucas from daycare and was walking home when I saw the black SUV parked in front of Emily's building. A tall man in an expensive suit stood beside it. He looked out of place in our neighborhood. Too polished. Too perfect. I knew him instantly. The guy she left me for. The reason everything exploded. He was talking to Emily at the bottom of the stairs. She didn't look thrilled. Arms crossed, face tight. But she wasn't sending him away either. My blood went cold. I didn't say anything. Just walked past, Lucas babbling in the stroller. Emily noticed us and called out, "Hey, wait." I stopped. Slowly turned around. The man smiled, extending his hand like we were old college friends. "You must be the dad," he said. "I've heard a lot about you." I didn't take his hand. Emily cleared her throat. "This is Mason." "Yeah," I said flatly. "I remember." Mason chuckled awkwardly. "Listen, I know this is complicated. But I'm not here to stir the pot. I just wanted to talk to Emily." Emily stepped in. "He's leaving tonight. He just wanted to apologize. For everything." I stared at her. "And you needed that?" She looked caught off guard. "No. I didn't ask him to come. But you didn't tell him to leave, either." That landed hard. Her lips parted like she wanted to explain, but nothing came out. I looked at Mason. "You've said your part. Now get out of here." He raised his hands. "Hey, man. I get it. I do. No hard feelings." I stepped between them, pushing the stroller. "You don't get to say that." And I walked away. That night, I didn't return Emily's texts. I was angry, not just at her, but at myself. For letting my guard down. For feeling things again. For thinking maybe this time could be different. Around midnight, there was a knock on my door. I opened it slowly. She stood there, hoodie on, eyes tired. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded silently. She sat on the couch. I stood. I didn't know he was coming, she said. He emailed me a few weeks ago. Said he was sorry. I didn't answer. I didn't expect he'd just show up. And when he did, I froze. Her voice cracked. I should have told him to leave. I panicked. I didn't want you to think that you still have feelings for him. I don't. I swear. But you didn't slam the door in his face, either. She looked down. I guess part of me wanted closure. I let out a bitter laugh. Closure doesn't come in $1,000 suits. Silence stretched. Finally, she looked up. Do you still believe I've changed? I did. I want to. But it shook something loose. I understand. I just don't know if I can do this again. You're not doing this alone. I'm here. I'm trying. I won't run again. I rubbed my face. Exhausted. Confused. She stood. Walked over. Placed a hand on my arm. Let me prove it. Not with words. With time. I didn't answer. But I didn't pull away. She nodded, turned toward the door. Before leaving, she said, I love the man you've become. Even if I never get to have him again. The door clicked shut behind her. And I stood in the silence, wondering whether some cracks are meant to be mended, or left alone as reminders. I didn't recognize him at first. It was late afternoon, and the birthday decorations were still up from the day before, deflated balloons, a few paper streamers drifting in the breeze from the open window. I was washing dishes when I heard the knock. It wasn't hurried or hesitant. It was the kind of knock that comes from someone who believes they still belong. Emily was in Lucas's room, helping him build a block tower, when I opened the door. He stood there, taller than I remembered from the photos. Dark hair, square jaw, expensive jacket, everything about him screamed confidence. But his eyes gave him away. There was something reckless behind them. Something unsteady. Is Emily home? He asked, voice too casual. I didn't move. He looked past me, into the hallway. I just need to talk to her. Just 5 minutes. Who are you? I asked, even though I already knew. He cocked his head. I'm Lucas's real father. And I want to see my son. The way he said it, my son, made my stomach turn. I stepped forward, blocking the doorway. You gave that up a long time ago. Not to you, he shot back, voice sharper now. You're not even blood. I don't know what I expected. Maybe guilt, or even regret. But there was nothing in his expression except entitlement. I didn't answer. I just shut the door. Behind me, Emily stood at the end of the hallway, her face drained of color. She'd heard everything. Why is he here? I asked. Her voice trembled. He messaged me 2 weeks ago. Said he wanted to talk. I told him not to come. Well, he did. She took a shaky breath. I'll tell him to leave. I don't want him here. But it was too late for that. The doorbell rang again. Then came the pounding. Angry, impatient. I'll handle it, she said quietly. I didn't want her to. Every protective instinct in me surged. But I stepped aside. From the kitchen, I watched her open the door. I told you not to come, she said, keeping her voice low. I'm not here to fight, he said, though his stance said otherwise. I just want to see him. For 5 minutes. I have a right. No, she said. You lost that right when you disappeared. He stepped forward. Come on, Em. Don't do this. He's my son. He's not yours. You've never even held him. There it was. The line drawn. He hesitated. So that's it. You're just going to raise him with that guy. She didn't answer. And that silence, that moment, cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Because I wasn't sure what we were, either. Eventually, she closed the door. We didn't speak that night. Not really. She sat on the couch with Lucas asleep in her arms, and I watched them from across the room, 100 questions burning in my chest. Why had she messaged him back? Why didn't she tell me? Why was I letting myself get pulled back into this again? The next morning, I went for a walk. I needed air. I needed clarity. Instead, I got a text. From him. We need to talk. Man to man. I stared at the message, heart hammering. Against my better judgment, I met him at a diner downtown. Neutral ground. Somewhere public. He sat in the back booth, stirring black coffee like he hadn't just detonated a bomb in my life. You don't have to do this, he said, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. Raise a kid that isn't yours. Pretend like you're a family. You've got time. Start over. Find someone new. I clenched my jaw. Why are you really here? He leaned forward. Because I've been thinking about that kid. I didn't care before. I wasn't ready. But now. I want to be part of his life. My stomach turned. You don't get to walk in a year later and claim that, I said. You're not a father. You're just a donor with good timing. That hit a nerve. His jaw tightened. You think you're better than me, he snapped. You think because you've been playing house, you're something special. I stood up. If you come near him again, I'll file for full guardianship. You'll be a ghost. You can try, he muttered. But I was already walking away. Back at the apartment, Emily was pacing. I saw the text, she said. You met him, didn't you? I nodded. What did he say? That he wants to be a dad now. That I should walk away. Her eyes filled. I'm sorry. I didn't know he'd do this. I didn't think he'd show up. I sat down, trying to steady my voice. What do you want, Emily? Really? She looked at me like I'd just broken something fragile. I want to move forward, she said. With you. With Lucas. I want to fix this. But you still let him in. Even a little. I didn't. You answered him. You kept it from me. She didn't deny it. I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything again. I stood up. You already did. And so did I. She grabbed my arm. Please. Don't leave. I pulled away. I'm not leaving. Not yet. But I need to think. I slept at a friend's place that night. The silence there was brutal. No crying baby. No clinking bottles. Just my thoughts, loud and relentless. I remembered the first time I held Lucas. How small he felt. How tightly his fingers had curled around mine. He wasn't mine. But he was. In every way that counted. And suddenly, I didn't know what I was more afraid of, staying or walking away for good. The next day, I got a call from Emily's father. I heard what happened, he said. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I know this isn't what you signed up for, he continued. But I also know how much you love that boy. My voice cracked. It's not enough. It is. It can be, he said. You just have to decide what kind of man you want to be. That night, I came home. Emily didn't say a word as I walked in. Lucas was sleeping on the couch, a little stuffed lion tucked against his cheek. He looked peaceful. Safe. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't about who deserved to be a father. It was about who chose to be one. I sat beside him, ran a hand through his soft, dark hair. He stirred, blinked once, then reached for me. And just like that, the world got quiet again. I didn't expect the custody papers. They came 3 days later, delivered in a plain envelope. No warning. No conversation. Just cold ink on thick paper, his name on the top, demanding partial rights to Lucas. Emily dropped the envelope on the kitchen table like it was something toxic. He's really doing this, she whispered. I stared at the papers. He wants shared custody. She nodded, eyes glassy. He's trying to prove he's fit now. He got a lawyer. He's never even spent a night with him. Never fed him. Changed a diaper. And now he wants weekends and holidays. She bit her lip. He's saying he's the biological father. That gives him a legal standing. I gritted my teeth. He left. He didn't want any part of this. He's claiming he didn't know Lucas was born until recently. My fist clenched against the table. That's a lie. I know, she said. But in court, it might not matter. The walls felt like they were closing in. I couldn't breathe. I had built a life with Lucas. Taught him how to walk. Held him during midnight fevers. Listened to his first word, which was, heartbreakingly, Dada. And now this stranger, this man who'd abandoned them both, was trying to take a piece of that life away. We sat in silence for a long time. Then I stood up. I'm going to fight him. Emily looked up. You don't have to. Yes, I do, I said. If I walk away now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. Then we fight together. We hired an attorney the next morning. A woman named Celia Moore, smart, sharp, no nonsense. She read the paperwork, skimmed our statements, and gave us a hard look. This won't be easy, she said. Biological fathers have rights, especially if they claim they didn't abandon the child knowingly. He's lying, Emily said. Celia nodded. I believe you. But proving it is another story. I leaned forward. What do we need? Documentation. Messages. Emails. Anything showing he knew she was pregnant, or that he chose to disappear. Emily swallowed hard. I have screenshots. He messaged me during the first trimester. Said he wasn't ready. Told me to handle it. Celia smiled faintly. That helps. A lot. And what about me? I asked. I've been raising Lucas since he was a baby. She nodded. If you want to pursue guardianship or even adoption, you need to show emotional bonding, financial support, caregiving records. We'll need statements from friends, photos, testimonies. I didn't hesitate. I'll give you everything. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Court preparation. Filing motions. Digging up records and receipts, pediatric appointments, daycare sign-ins, even photos of me helping Lucas blow out birthday candles. But just when I thought we had a strong case, he played his card. He showed up with his version of a life. Clean-cut. Sober. New job. A modest apartment with a crib set up in the corner, a desperate shrine to a child he'd never met. He's staging, Emily said after their court-mandated mediation meeting. He's trying to look stable. Is it working? I asked. She looked down. Maybe. His lawyer's aggressive. I felt the walls tremble again. Then came the hearing. It wasn't a full trial, not yet. Just an emergency motion hearing to determine whether Lucas should have temporary contact with his biological father. I sat at the back of the courtroom, hands sweating through my sleeves. Emily was beside me, clutching my wrist like a lifeline. He walked in wearing a blue suit, hair slicked, eyes clear. The kind of man who knew how to pretend. His attorney spoke first. Claimed that he'd made mistakes, yes, but that he was now stable, employed, and committed to being a father. He deserves a chance, the lawyer said. And the child deserves the truth of his identity. Then Celia stood. And what she said punched through the silence like a knife. This is not about biology, she said. This is about commitment. About a child who has been raised by 2 loving adults, and 1 man who has been there for every scraped knee, every bad dream, every fever at 3 a.m. She showed the judge the photos. The calendar appointments. The signed pediatric records. She ended with a quote I'll never forget. Any man can create life. But only a father sacrifices his own to protect it. The judge asked one final question: would Lucas recognize his biological father if he walked into this courtroom? Emily answered, quietly, no. But he'd run into his arms, she pointed at me, without hesitation. The judge delayed the final decision. We had 30 days. In those 30 days, everything changed. Lucas began asking questions. Who is that man? Why is mommy sad? I didn't know how to explain any of it. So I told him the truth, the gentle kind. Some people show up late. But that doesn't mean they get to take you away. He nodded like he understood. Like his small heart already knew who was safe. Then one night, Emily sat beside me on the couch. There's something I haven't told you. I tensed. What is it? She looked down. He offered me money. A lot. Said if I dropped the case and agreed to visitation, he'd give me enough to pay off everything. The debt. Lucas's future. I stared at her, stunned. And I told him to shove it. Tears welled in my eyes. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I wanted you to know I'm not with you because it's easy. I'm with you because it's right. I kissed her like it was the first time. And for the first time in weeks, I felt hope. The final hearing is in 3 days. I don't know how it will go. I don't know if the judge will see what we see, a man who shows up, not one who just shows up late. But what I do know is this. I won't back down. I won't let Lucas become a pawn in someone else's game. He's not just a child. He's my heart. And I'm going to protect him with everything I've got. Even if I have to go down swinging. The night before the final hearing, none of us slept. Emily tried. She lay curled on the far side of the bed, her hand on my chest, her breathing slow but shallow. I stared at the ceiling, counting every minute, every doubt, every memory. Lucas slept between us, his little arm draped over my ribs like a silent promise. His hair smelled like strawberries and soap. He didn't know what the next morning meant, what it could take from us. I didn't want him to. At 6:47 a.m., I got out of bed, careful not to wake them. I stood in the kitchen and watched the sun begin to rise. Today I might lose my son. I couldn't stop thinking it. But I also couldn't let fear win. Court felt colder than it had the first time. Maybe because this was the end. No more hearings. No more delays. Today, the judge would decide whether Lucas would stay in the only home he'd ever known, or be torn into shared weekends and awkward visitations with a man he didn't remember. We brought everything we had. Celia wore black, her notes neatly organized, her tone razor-sharp. She presented our case like it was a story, not just of custody, but of commitment. Emily spoke next. She told the judge how she'd faced postpartum depression, financial struggle, loneliness, and how I was the only one who never left. How I had held her hand in the darkest nights. How I had taught Lucas to ride a bike, to hold a spoon, to love books. Then I stood up. My voice trembled at first. But I looked the judge in the eyes and told him the truth. Your Honor, I didn't create Lucas. But I raised him. I didn't give him his blood, but I've given him everything else. I paused. I would die for that boy. But more importantly, I live for him. Silence. Thick, full, heavy. Then the other side spoke. His lawyer painted him as a changed man, reformed, sober, employed, stable. He claimed he'd been unaware of the pregnancy. That had he known, he would have been there. That now, he only wanted a chance. Then he said something that made my stomach flip. I'm not trying to take the child away. I just want to know him. It sounded gentle. Reasonable. But I saw through it. So did Emily. We'd lived through his disappearing act. We knew how easily, just a visit, could become a crack in the foundation. The judge recessed for lunch. 2 hours. We sat outside on a bench in the courtyard. Emily held my hand. Lucas, thankfully, was with Emily's mom. I didn't want him anywhere near this. I stared at the sky, wondering what it meant if we lost. Would I get weekends? Holidays? Would I have to watch Lucas grow confused, ask why he had 2 dads? Why one left and one stayed? I didn't realize I was crying until Emily touched my cheek. No matter what, she whispered, you're his father. But if the court can't change the truth, she said. You love him. He loves you. That's what matters. We went back inside. Waited in a thick silence. Then the judge returned. He shuffled his papers. Adjusted his glasses. Cleared his throat. And everything in the world seemed to stop. I've reviewed the evidence, heard the testimonies, and studied both parties' intentions carefully, he began. I believe the biological father is making a sincere effort to re-enter the child's life. And while his past actions are concerning, he appears to be rehabilitated. My heart dropped. But, the judge continued, fatherhood is not about biology alone. It is built, daily, with patience, sacrifice, and love. I held my breath. In this case, the court recognizes that Mr. Grant, he looked at me, has acted as the de facto parent in the child's life. He has provided consistent care, financial support, and emotional stability since infancy. Emily gasped. Therefore, the judge said, it is in the best interest of the child that Mr. Grant be granted full legal guardianship, with the option to pursue adoption with the consent of the biological mother. I blinked. Did I hear that right? As for the biological father, he added, any future visitation will be supervised, at the discretion of the guardian and court-appointed professionals. Reunification may be considered only after psychological assessment and the child's explicit comfort with such interaction. I turned to Emily. Her hands were over her mouth. Her shoulders shook. We had won. Outside the courtroom, I finally let the tears fall. Emily fell into my arms, sobbing, laughing. You did it, she whispered. You saved him. No, I said, kissing her hair. We saved him. 3 months later, we finalized the adoption. The papers were signed in a quiet office, with Lucas playing on the floor and the lawyer smiling warmly. Emily cried the whole time. When they handed me the final document, Lucas looked up and said, Dada. I scooped him up, held him close, and said, forever, buddy. I'm yours forever. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still scars. Still nights Emily woke from bad dreams. Still moments when I doubted I deserved the word father. But every morning, when Lucas came barreling into our bed and wrapped his arms around my neck, those doubts faded. Because love isn't earned in a day. It's earned in thousands of little ones. And I had no intention of wasting a single one. Epilogue, 5 years later. Lucas is 8 now. He reads too much. He's obsessed with dinosaurs and math. He calls Emily Mom and me Dad, like he's always known those words belong to us. The biological father never resurfaced. He sent one letter, supervised contact request. We declined. So did Lucas. Emily runs her own design studio now. I work from home, pick up Lucas from school every day. We're happy. Not perfect. But real. And sometimes, that's even better. Because I didn't just get to keep my son. I got to earn him. Every single day.